Since we are recording the Zoom room, that means we are also live. You guys' phones need to be put away. Your distracting tabs need to be closed. And you need to keep in mind that I have a hot mic up here recording all of your guys' things that you say when I'm not talking. So be aware that there is a recording microphone in the room. Okay, so if we look at our agenda for the day, I want to focus mostly on these two parts, these two ideas here today. This new submission method is going to be a way that allows me to actually keep up with your grades. So it is by no fault of y'all that I'm behind on grades. I just have, I'm a new teacher. I'm learning a lot about how I like to work and what works best for you. And I'm understanding that you guys have a lot of assignments to do. And so I'm going to make an effort to adjust that, make it a little easier for you to understand what I'm actually trying to get you to understand with web design, and make grading more efficient and more quick on my part. And the way we're going to do that, as compared to what we've typically done, which is like worksheets, right? I give you one piece of paper, you give me back one piece of paper that's completed. Instead, we're going to go more towards a binder check / notebook check, submitting them all at once in one root folder that I can quickly check with a table of contents, as compared to me having to unzip. If we do 6 assignments, 6 root folders for each of you, times 100 of my students, that's 600 root folders. So it's a lot of stuff that I'm having to keep track of. And this also makes it easier for you guys to keep track of what the assignments are and keep them all in one spot. It's just, I think the system's going to work better, but also it's a work in progress. So anyways, what is that actually going to look like? Instead of what we're used to, if I pull up my my 6th period web design folder, this is a ton of stuff. This is a lot to keep track of. Even with the Canvas naming scheme, it's still kind of confusing to see what is actually here, what's happening here. I don't know what really any of these are necessarily. So the solution I have in mind is instead creating a single root folder for an entire unit. And then each assignment that I give you is another HTML file and another style sheet inside of one main root. So what does that completed folder or that completed unit, so to speak, look like at the end of the unit once we've completed all the assignments? It's going to look a little something like this. So you have this table of contents that has your class, your name, and your date, as well as the specifics to whatever unit we're working with. A little table of contents with links to those HTML pages, and then a free open canvas for you guys to decorate this however you want. It's optional. You don't have to put anything in here. But if you wanted to decorate this table of contents, this kind of cover of your notebook, so to speak, you have that opportunity and you have that space to do that. Cheyenne, what's up?
Could we submit these all at once in a different way if we know how to do it?
I'll talk to you separately. I will let you know. There is a way that we can make it work, yes. But what it would look like, this is your homepage. You can put whatever you want on your homepage. Each one of these, let's say there's 5 assignments in unit, or 4 assignments, excuse me, in unit 5, not projects. Projects will stick to their own folder so that we can keep those separate. But these are all assignments. Let's say 5.1 was asking you to make a 4x4 table. So that would be linked to your index page. The HTML is all here. Say 5.2, you were supposed to create 2 different lists. 5.3, you were supposed to experiment with something called the iframe tag. There's the iframe tag. And then finally 5.4, you had to do some work with some images or whatever. So now, the way this looks in the VS Code side of things, this is what it's going to look like when I'm grading. So I get your notebook, I get your chapter review, and I say, okay, let's look at 5.1. Did you do what I was asking for 5.1? Cool. Did you do what I was asking for 5.2? Cool. Did you do what I was asking for 5.3, 5.4? I can see all of it in one spot. I only have to unzip one folder. You only have to submit one folder. This should make everything quite a bit easier and quite a bit faster. So instead of submitting like what we've done previously, let's see if I can get into our modules here real quick. What you'll do instead is for each unit, there will be one submission spot. So if we go to Unit 5, Advanced CSS, you would submit your Unit 5 root here. So all of this, if we go back to VS Code, is contained within a single root folder for the entire unit. This is everything for Unit 5. Each one of these HTML pages is similar to the entire root folders that you're used to setting up, but instead they're focusing on one specific assignment in Canvas or one specific web design thing I want you to experiment with. And they also each have their own style sheet. affecting whatever I was having you guys do for that assignment. I have one unifying style sheet as well. You can customize this however you want for your table of contents. You can see it's just a mix of anchors and then just some text describing how the things work. But that's optional as well. You don't need to style your table of contents at all. It's just an extra HTML document if you want to experiment or if you want to just mess around. There's another place for you to do that, kind of like a space to doodle on the front of a notebook. So how this would work in class, let's see, I'll show you the entire setup. We'll make one for 6th period because this is all the way back from 1st. I am in my, let me close all my other distracting tabs here. I am in my File Explorer for 6th period. I'm going to create a new folder for this entire unit. This is what I'll have you guys do today. B. Blakeney, P6. Just have it for all of Unit 5. You could add some extra detail on the end there, like advanced CSS or something like that. But I'm just going to stick with Unit 5 like normal. Okay, so when we double click on Unit 5, obviously there's nothing in there. We know that. I'm going to make a subfolder for styles like normal and a subfolder for SRC like normal, because there's going to be a couple different file types that we're working with, as well as later in the units, later and stuff like that. So I'm going to have a folder for everything that's not HTML or CSS. It's my SRC folder, style subfolder to keep all my style sheets, and then my root to contain all of my HTML. So let's say on a day like tomorrow, when we get into the assignments for Unit 5, what you'll do in VS Code, after you go File, Open Folder, let's open up, if we go to 6th period web design, we open up our Unit 5 main folder, our main chapter, our section for Unit 5 specifically. What you'll do before you do anything is create your index page. This is the way you'll navigate around to your different HTML files. Oops, I did it wrong. Make this HTML. And then start this HTML file like normal. Just put a little anchor, or not an anchor, excuse me, an H1. I can just type H1 and hit enter and say this is the home page for all of my Unit 5 assignments. So let's say on a day like tomorrow, when we're talking about 5.1, you're going to open up this root folder for everything, create a new file, name it like normal. So B. Blakeney _ P6 _ 5.1, like we're used to, and then a .html at the end so that we know that for sure. Okay, start that HTML file like normal. HTML5. I'm going to add a little H1 here. This is assignment 5.1, right? And then this is where you would do whatever 5.1 is asking. This is where you would make your table, your list, your image, your travel site, whatever. It all goes in this 5.1 HTML file, which I'm going to change the document right here. So the document title, I mean, B. Blakeney, P6, 5.1. Okay, so 5.1 needs a style sheet. So I'm going to make one specific to that and just call it 5.1 style.css. Okay, and let's make something, let's just make a quick change. We'll set the body color to be white so that it inverts when I change the background color to black. And change the background dash color. Just pretend this is what that 5.1 is asking of you after I've kind of shown you what we're going to talk about in Unit 5. So then go back to my my P6 5.1 HTML file. Scroll over, go to the end of line 6, type LINK, and then hit enter. That's going to auto pop up with the rel style sheet and href. Go subfolder name first, styles, and then 5.1 style.css. And then finally, you need that third piece for CSS. You need to have memorized equals text/CSS, type equals text/CSS. And now I have completed my HTML page for 5.1, my style sheet for 5.1, and I've linked the two of them together. My index page, though, is currently blank. So I need to make an anchor tag to 5.1 so that when Mr. Blakeney goes to grade, I have access to everything within your pages without having to dig through your root folder. So I'm just going to type A, enter, just kidding, A, enter. It's going to auto fill out with anchor href. And then I'm going to put the name of the HTML file. It's a normal anchor setup, but instead it's going on our index page for Unit 5. And I'm going to put 5.1 in here, and then we'll get, I don't know, let me grab just an image. Or my favorite web page. I don't know. Whatever you want to put on your index page is totally up to you. As long as it's school appropriate, I do not mind. So I'm gonna add a horizontal line so I can start kind of experimenting. This is just me messing around at this point. Enter to put an anchor, Control V for cool math games, and I'm gonna put cool math games, normal anchor setup, but it's on my HTML index, so I can really do whatever I want as long as I've linked my assignments together. So now, when I go to run this index page, this is what it'll look like when I grade. I pull open your table of contents. I can see that all of your assignments are going to be anchored towards the top here, and then whatever space you want to use this for is up to you. It's all your call. If I click on 5.1, it will take me to whatever assignment 5.1 was asking for. This is just a way that you'll submit a single root folder, which I actually need to go in and change the document title to be Unit 5 Index, like that. This will be the way that you can submit all of your assignments at once, and then I will just grade it based on that instead of having to unzip every one of your folders and make sure that they all work. It's also a way to keep your files organized. Now that you know inside of units, if we go to our 6th period root, all of your Unit 5 work is going to be contained right here. So you can quickly access that. You can put more subfolders inside of your SRC so that you can organize it based on the page. The call is totally up to you, and it's just a way to make things, hopefully, we'll see how this works at the end of this week, a little bit easier. Does anybody have any questions presently? Are we all good? All right, good deal. So let's get introduced to some of the stuff that we're going to cover during this Unit 5, during this whole setup for our root folders here. I have attached on our agenda here before we get into the PowerPoint. If you go to our weekly thread by going to announcements and then P6 web design, on our weekly thread, I've attached my example that I showed off with the Shaq GIF on it. If you want to unzip that and see how I configured that, you have that reference file for your reference if you need it, and that's attached to our agenda, which is exactly where the Zoom room is going to go once I finish recording. Okay, so real quick, let's breeze through this PowerPoint so I'm not talking the entire period. 5.1 is going to be doing some miscellaneous CSS stuff so that we have some more advanced knowledge of CSS and how we can apply it, how we can use it, especially with the focus on making your page more responsive. It responds better to change from the user and responds better to a variety of different viewport sizes. So, talking about the new file structure maneuver, you can load a file, which just means you're typing out the source or the href. You can load a file in the same directory simply by naming it. We're used to this. So the picture is inside of the root folder. If you type image src, that picture PNG is easily accessible from the root folder here with alt text of whatever. What's new, kind of, is that you can load a file in a folder or directory level lower by listing the folder or directory and the /. This isn't new directly. We use this every time we create a Zelda link with a styles subfolder, because we add that styles subfolder first, then a /, then the name of the file with whatever is going in there. We are used to these two things. This third thing is new. This is specifically useful for the next thing I'm going to show you, background images. The .. allows you to look outside of whatever root folder your file is existing in. This is especially useful for CSS and style sheets because the only thing in that subfolder is style sheets. When you need to access an image or another type of file, you need to use that .. to escape or jump out of the existing CSS folder. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So if I were to have a large folder open, like my 6th period web design folder, with a ton of different resources and file types and datas and whatever, it's going to be, I have more, here, I'll show you in a second. Sorry, I lost my footing. Okay, so let's close all these. Let's say I'm working on 4.1. I have my 4.1 index open. If I'm trying to get a file out of 4.7.3, like if we go into images, which doesn't have any, let's go 4.7.2, SRC, give me an image. There's no images anywhere. Okay, let me find an image so I can show you how this works. I know I have images in here somewhere. There we go. Okay, we'll use that. So this QR code is for our Spotify playlist all the way back at the start of the year, but it's inside of this etc. folder in my root. By default, let's say I'm trying to attach that image in 4.1. You can see I'm contained in my 4.1 root. Even if I type image and then inside the SRC, I type the file name WD62324, WD62324, and then I include the file name as well, or the file extension. Alt text is QR code. Even though I've named it correctly, if I run this, there's going to be no image. It's going to be a broken tag right here. By using .. if I go back to my index page, what? This is a debug console. There we go. Okay. By using .. I'm allowing my HTML to look outside of its root, to escape outside of 4.1 and access the folder above it, go one step backwards to my main folder here, which can then find WD 62324. So I'm going to go .. You can see all the pop-ups are going to appear here. I'm going to find etc, etc. Okay. And then the PNG that I'm looking for. And because of this .. I'm allowed to look outside of my roots and down into other folders contained inside my main space here. So now if I were to run this with the .. the QR code would appear. So .. is the way that you can get out of your root folder, which is super useful for background images. Background images are exclusive pieces of CSS that you can make an image the entire background of your page, or you can make a background image take up an element that has width and height like a div once you've assigned it by using this .. maneuver and a property called URL, Universal Resource Locator. So this is going to be relative to the CSS file. So a .. is only going to make it go back one step. What do I mean when I say steps? Well, if we're looking at our 6-period web design, this 6WD is the top step in our staircase or in our pyramid for all of our other root folders. To go one step down, say if I wanted to open up 2.5, I've taken one step into 2.5. Say I wanted to go my 2.5 images, I've taken another step inside of there. That's 3 steps. So if I go into my style sheet, there's no style sheet for 2.5 because we hadn't done that yet. It can only go up one level for the most part. So if I had this folder open in VS Code, it would only be able to see these files. Since I opened my main folder with everything, that's why I was allowed to access the folder here, because it can see that as this is the top of my staircase. Does that make sense? You can't go further than whatever folder you have open, but if you have a bunch of files inside that folder, .. is going to allow you to access them. So let's say I wanted to set a background image for my new Unit 5 page. Just select that folder. I need to get an image in there. Let me grab an image real quick. I'll just take a screenshot here of Cool Math Games. Come on, my computer's being slow. All right, so I have my Cool Math Games screenshot, which I'm going to save to my root folder here. 6-period web design, Unit 5, SRC, save. Okay, close out of that. I think I closed the wrong thing. I did, I closed VS Code. All right, oops. Let me reopen VS Code, sorry. Okay, so we're back here. And I can see capture PNG inside of my root because that's where I just saved it. So since this style sheet is contained within this styles folder, if I wanted to set that image to be my background, I would have to use .. by typing out the property background image, and then URL parentheses quotes. You do need all of those, but parentheses quotes .. That allows me to look outside of my style subfolder into SRC for capture PNG, that if I were to refresh and run this page, it should be taking up the entire, oh, I tried to run CSS. That's what happens. That's where you get the launch JSON. So anytime you see this .VS Code folder, it means your debug is not going to work. So I'm going to right click and delete that anytime I don't actually want it or have it created. Okay, so on my 5.1 style, I've got my background .. to the capture PNG. If I run that, it should, in theory, it's going to be super hard to see, but you can see this mess right here. It's set the image to be the whole background of my entire viewport. So background images will expand into more detail later on. And there's a couple ways that you can change it by offsetting it or by setting the background size to a specific size. You can change it to cover, you can change it to contain. There's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to do probably tomorrow about background images. The next thing we're going to be looking at this assignment is something called floats. Float is going to make whatever element you give it the float property of hug that specific side of the window. The left or the right is the one we're going to be focusing on. And it will cause elements to wrap around the floating element without having to do all of that Flexbox setup that we did earlier this week. Typically, you have floats set with a width, but long elements don't look like they floated without it. You just need to give it a little bit of size so that you can see how it floats. It'll make more sense later this week. We're also going to talk about changing list styles, as well as list style images. Similarly with the URL, the .. just like in a background image, and you can specify a backup style type just in case the image isn't available. This week, we're also going to talk about pseudo classes. It's a way to get more specific with your CSS and add something called conditionals. So if certain things are met, like an anchor link has not been visited, has been visited when you hover over it, the first letter of a paragraph, all types of specifics you can add to your CSS. We're going to talk about that with this first part of Unit 5. We're also going to talk about centering your elements and vertically aligning them with a couple different new properties and values that we can adjust here. So that's the quick breakdown of how CSS is going to work for this unit. Since we've gotten through the PowerPoint, I will publish it, make it available so you guys can reference it throughout this week. Let's look at our agenda and see what we've got for the remainder of the day here. So where is my agenda? I've lost it. Too many stuff open. Okay, web design. That's our Unit 5 intro. So let's talk real quick about the 4.7 deadline. So currently the deadline on 4.7 is January 5th, 2024. That's the first Friday after break. So you can still turn it in by then. I won't accept it after January 5th, but that's the latest you can submit it. So you still have some time on that. Now, since I am a new teacher and I'm figuring out my late work policy, as of right now, the way that it exists, you can submit 4.7.3 by Friday the 8th with no late penalty. The way that it works is after 7 days, it becomes 10% off. After 14 days, it becomes 20% off. And then it will not be accepted after 21 days. It's a 3-week breakdown. The way that that shakes out, though, is you can turn it in 6.9 days late and it's still not 7. So you can still get full credit on something like that. I know it's a system that doesn't make the most sense. That's my bad. I'm still figuring stuff out up here. So just so we're on the same page there. So you can submit that 4.7.3 by Friday with no late penalty. And that's where we're at on that. So my goal for you guys today, it's an easy day because tomorrow we're going to get into using this actual new chapter, root folder, table of contents, whatever setup. The only thing you guys need to have to do today is to have your Unit 5 main setup made so that we can start using it tomorrow in class. That make sense? Cool. Does anybody have any questions before I help you guys get everything set up and make sure we're all good there? All good? All right, sweet. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. Good deal. Okay, I'm going to close up the Zoom room. We'll go off the air and I'll help you guys get set up with your roots. We'll have an easy day today. Do you have a question, Sophia? Okay.
I do too.
Okay, no worries.